Welcome to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School, where we explore all kinds of things, stories about quilting, tools, field trips, maybe some famous quilters stop by, and, of course, a little bit of copyright filming just for fun. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Townsend-Gard. I'm a law professor, and I just wanna quilt. Okay, so today we talked to Philipa Core. She is a quilter. She's part of our Quilting Army, and she is from Australia. She tells us about quilting in Australia and how it's a little bit different than here in the U.S. So we're going to start with, because we're preserving these, I'm going to ask you your name and where you are calling from today, and then I'm going to ask you the first basic question.
Okay. Do you want me to tell you without you having to ask me?
Yep.
My name is Philipa Core, and I live in central Queensland, Australia.
Cool.
And my husband is now walking in, and so he's not, I know what's going on. Anyway, stop.
Do you want to pause and tell him we're just chatting?
Yes, I'm chatting, dear. So yes, he's just nodding and walking away.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. Okay. So cool. So, what's your first memory of someone sewing or quilting in your life?
My mum had a treadle sewing machine. I'm the youngest of 8 children, and I remember her sewing with it and making things. I do remember we used to play with it and pretend it was a machine, like we take the belt off so it wasn't actually running the needle, and we just pebble it and pretend it was something. I don't know. She'd probably given up trying to keep us off it by then. So that was when I was probably 4 or 5. I remember Mum sewing. I think she had an electric machine, but she did sew, but not a lot. And as to patchwork quilts, my great aunt used to make these quilts for us because we were quite poor, and she would make them out of rags and scrap fabrics, and they were called Auntie Sisters. That's what because her name was Bertha, but she was my grandmother's sister and was always known as Sis, and so she became Auntie Sis. So they were, in looking back, they were a patchwork quilt of sorts.
Do you still have some of those? Do you have those quilts?
No, I just remember they existed. My older sister, who's 15 years older than me, tells me that they were heavy but not warm. Yeah, apparently, like, had stacking as in the middle of them. So yeah, but I remember I thought they were groovy, but I don't know what happened to them. We lived on the farm till I was about 6 or 7, and then we moved into town. And I remember them on the farm, but I don't remember them in town. So whether they didn't make the move, I don't know. And I can't ask. Mum's 96 this year, but she's pretty good at some things, but her memories, you can't ask her specifics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. And when did you start sewing or quilting?
Well, I did a sewing course when I was at school. We called it needlework. I did it for 6 months in my first year at high school. Wasn't very good at it. Didn't do much more for years. Then in 1980, you can tell the brain is trying to tick it over. 1989, my husband gave me a sewing machine for Christmas. And we were living in a different town. We were very busy, and I didn't have time to learn to sew, but I did try and use it a little bit. And then we moved town, and it was brilliant because I was no longer the secretary of this and the something of that. I had no commitments. We moved to this new town, and one of the first things I did was sign up for sewing classes, stretch sewing classes, and So I did that. I started sewing, and it was amazing. I could make things that were wearable and decent and didn't look too bad.
It's
and
so cool. And it's so cool when that happens, right? It's like this sewing isn't just practical. It's like this empowerment. Like, oh my gosh, I made this thing and it's not horrible. It's amazing.
Yeah, actually, when my husband offered to buy me a sewing machine years before that, and I'd said, "Oh, look, if you spend $20 on a sewing machine for me, you've spent $10 too much," thinking I'd never use it. And then somewhere on the line, we found this in a second-hand shop, a treadle sewing machine. And I just thought it was a beautiful piece of machinery. And so we bought it and we used it. We didn't gut it, but he restored it, and we just used it as a thing to put our television on, because this was back in 82 and televisions were much smaller than they are now. And we've still got it, and it still serves more as a table than a sewing machine. But he would use it. He did some sewing. He did some upholstery, and he would use this old sewing machine to I wouldn't let him. By this stage, I had a sewing machine. I wouldn't let him use it. So I did. But I used to say about patchwork, why would you take perfectly good pieces of fabric, chop them into little bits and sew them back together again?
Right.
Seemed exercise in futility to me.
Right. Do you still feel that way? Do you still feel that way about fabric?
Oh, absolutely not.
No?
A girlfriend across the road, she was going to start going to these patchwork classes that a local fabric shop had. And she said, "Oh, you should come with me." I said, "All right, but it's not going to take over my life." And that girlfriend spoke that back to me. So I started doing this. I'm trying to think. I think it was monthly. We used to meet and make the block. It certainly wasn't every week. And the lady who owned the shop, it was a mixed shop, so it had men's wear and work clothes, and up the back was the fabric section. And her name was Peggy Pyle. And so she taught me to do patchwork. And back it was templates. We had this book. She illegally would print off pages from the book because it was no longer available, so she felt justified. She would print off, and we would would you believe I made a queen size sampler quilt, all hand cut.
Wow.
Templates.
That's a lot of work.
And my husband, I remember when I got it finished, my husband said, "Was I going to quilt it myself?" And I said, "No." And he said, "But wouldn't that make it better?" And I was like, "Mate, if I'm going to learn to quilt, I'm not going to start on a queen size." I had enough sense to know that wasn't the way it should be. So I paid someone to quilt that, but I immediately started on another one. I did, to start with, I was very determined I wasn't going to become one of these people who had 57, different projects on the go. It took a long time.
Are you still that way? So I felt that way too, but things have gotten a little out of hand, I have to say. So have you been able to stick to one?
I got
one or
very
two
out of hand at one stage.
Yeah.
I joined this internet group, and we had monthly swaps, and I was making all these. They were just simple 9 patches, but different themes, and I made all these swaps. I wasn't actually getting around to putting them together, so I did end up with a lot of blocks that needed making. And so, yes, I did have a lot of projects on the go.
Yeah.
But I'm not as much anymore. A few years ago, I read about it somewhere. I put myself on a fabric diet and also a project diet. So the idea was I wasn't allowed to buy any new fabric unless it was to complete an existing project, and I wasn't allowed to start any new projects. This was for 1 year. The only exception I allowed myself was if there was a new baby coming in the family.
And did you
Because
find that with the fabric diet and the project diet, you actually got stuff done?
I did. I wrote a list of all my projects and I knocked off so many. And a little bit, we did have an amazing explosion in the family. I had about 6 great nieces and nephews, or I don't make a baby cook for any baby I know that's coming. I try to limit it. They have to be very special people.
Mm-hmm.
And there were about 6, 4 great nieces and nephew, and 2, my daughter's close friend had a baby, and my close girlfriend had a grandchild. So I didn't have 6 baby quilts on the go. So I did, and I actually did buy some fabric. That was the only time I broke my diet in that 12 months, was I bought fabric, panels. They were sort of like 4 mini panels to what would be a normal panel.
Yeah.
So the 4 of them or 6 of them made what would be a normal cot size panel. So, yep, I did, and it was amazingly releasing and freeing to not feel that compulsion to buy more fabric.
Yeah.
Buy more fabric.
I think I need to take your advice, because I feel like, I used to be so under control, and then this project started, and I would do examples and experience different patterns, and then I wouldn't get that one done, and then there'd be another interview, and now it's just like I have like so many projects that are like in various states, and it's stressful, and I think quilting shouldn't be stressful. So I think maybe your diet is a way to go, because
I really do recommend it. And Australian fabric is a lot more expensive than it is in America, and I almost go into fits of laughter when I hear, read on a blog or on one of the Facebook groups I'm on, someone expounding about, oh no, fabric's just gone up to $9 a metre or $9 a yard.
Right.
I'm not going to be able to sew anymore. And I'm thinking, try $27 Australian, which is coming out at $30-something. So I think for Australians...
That's really interesting. So do you think that changes the nature of quilting in Australia because of the price of the fabric?
I think people would certainly... some people do still have massive fabric stashes. We can buy overseas. A lot of people... And I think that has contributed to the death of many Australian local fabric shops, because we buy overseas... even more, because it's so much cheaper than to buy locally. Because also Australian wages are a lot higher than American wages in general. Our shop assistants are paid over $20 an hour, whereas in the States I think it's like $9 or something.
So more money to spend.
So we do have more money to spend, but also it means the prices are more too.
Yeah.
So our local fabric shop have a lot higher overheads because of what they have to pay. Yeah, it's just so I think it does help. We don't have the access to the fabrics in the real life that many.
Yeah.
And I'm an older generation. I'm 59. I'm not 59. I'm only 58. My birthday is not for me. It's really scary to think I'm only 60. That's really old.
I know, it's hard. It's hard.
It's not as old as it used to be. But I do think I know most people my age and most people I know aren't caught up in the, Tula Pink's released a new line of fabric, I must buy it all. Oh, Denise Schmidt. I don't think in Australia we are, the celebrity of quilters isn't
interesting
as big.
Why do you
maybe
think,
a little?
Why do you think that?
So in the States, because you're much more densely populated and you have a much higher population and you have your local quilt guilds, you have monthly meetings where you have designers and pattern makers and stuff that can come along to your meetings.
Yep.
And obviously your bigger ones, and maybe in the, if that designer lives in your state or your city area, you can get them to come along more easily.
Right.
Whereas we're a very sparse populated country. The size of Australia, we're as big as the United States. Our population is under 30 million.
Amazing.
Most of our population is on the coast. Most of it's on the east coast rather than the west coast, the top or the bottom. So we're just distance. For someone to get a designer to come out and talk to us, it would just be prohibitive, the cost. Just getting them here, like paying for their airfares and their accommodation would be far more than we could afford, let alone paying them to come.
Yeah.
So I think, I just think it's just a different culture. And I mean, I can only speak. I've only ever been a member of one quilt guild, as you would call it. We call it a quilt group here. We meet weekly.
You call it you meet weekly, and what do you call it? You don't call it a guild. You call it what?
A sewing group. But I mean, there are guilds.
Yeah.
There are guilds in Australia that do meet more along the American lines, but not in my hometown. We have a monthly meeting, but it's a business meeting where you have, correspondence in, correspondence out, bills to be paid, maybe. Oh, and actually, we don't have them monthly anymore. We have them bi-monthly. We don't have a topic. It's just like a business meeting, not and that's just deal with the business of running the group. The rest of the time, we're very blessed in that our local council has these a block of craft rooms built at the back of the town library when it was remodeled, and we get that. We don't pay rent for it; it's ours. It's quite a big space. We have to we have to furnish it, and we pay the electricity, but that's all we pay for. We had to do it as we wanted with it, but it's ours. It's not like these groups that have to find a space. So we're very different. That's not the case for most quilt groups in Australia, let alone the rest of the world. So we can meet, and we've all got our own key. Once you've been a member, we get a key after a certain period, after a 2-month cooling off period, while we make sure you're not, random rat bag. and you can go up there anytime you like. And so we have a sign-in sheet, and we pay very minimum, $2 when you're there, and that's sort of to help cover the electricity and to help cover the, there's tea and coffee there that you can make yourself. So,
Interesting.
They're very different. Yeah.
That's very interesting.
But that's very different to most other, So I'm not saying this is how all quilt groups in Australia run. It's not.
Yeah. Interesting.
We're very good. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Okay, you asked me some sensible questions, so I'm stop rapping.
No, it's all good. So a lot of the quilt guilds here, one of the things they do is, besides the lectures and guests and all that, is a lot of charity quilting. Do you have a lot of charity quilting? Do you find that in Australia? A lot of groups?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes, a lot of groups. So for charity and make things, there are various organisations, hospitals and veterans and children's hospitals and refugees and stuff like that people sew for.
Yeah.
My own quilt group, we do so if we have a particular project. We might get really busy. A few years ago, I think it was 2009, there were some terrible bushfires in Victoria, another state of Australia. 167 people were killed in these fires.
Oh, my goodness.
And many people lost their homes. And our quilt group, it just triggered something in us, and we just started to sew. And I think our quilt group made about 50 quilts in a space of, 4 or 5 weeks or
That's
6
amazing.
weeks or whatever. It might have been longer. I can't remember. I know we sewed and sewed and sewed. And we were given wadding, one of the shops gave us a bolt of wadding, one of the mining companies, because we're a rural town, but there are coal mines around us. So we were given, they gave us money to buy the wadding to put, because the batting is, a big expense. People donated fabric.
That's great.
We often get, yeah. So that was a big thing. Our group also made ones that we took down to one of the children's hospitals here in Queensland, in Brisbane, the Lady Salento Children's Hospital. We took down about 10 or 12 quilts at one stage. So,
and how important do you think, like, what role do you think charity quilting, and even like when you make quilts for people when they have babies, like why is that important? Why is the sort of making and giving important? As part of the tradition. Do you have a sense of sort of why that is? Because it's true. I mean, there is a lot of like spending hours and hours and hours, hundreds of hours sometimes on things, and then giving them away. That's unusual if you think about the rest of our economy. That doesn't really happen,
Well, I think there's a little bit of selfishness in it too, in that we love to sew.
Uh-huh.
We enjoy sewing. There's only so many quilts you can put on your own bed, stick in your own cupboards.
It's very
so true. A lot of quilters are like, they're going to sew anyway. Maker's going to make.
Yeah.
Quilter's going to quilt. And so having a venue to offload,
right?
Because if you've given it away, I haven't got a quilt. Get to make another one. So there is a little bit.
So true.
I think there's a lot of that. A lot of it is just quilters want to sew. We want to sew, and by giving them away, we get to feel good about it as well. But I also I love to make the quilts to give to my nieces and nephews when they have babies. Because now I live in Queensland, in central Queensland. I'm nearly 2,000 kilometres from most of my family. So my family live in and around Sydney for the most part. So that's 20 hours driving.
That's a lot.
Plus your breaks for me.
Yeah.
So I don't get to see them as much as I would like. So making a quilt when they've had a baby is a way of showing my love.
Yeah. I agree.
It gives them something to remind them of me. Now, the first one I made, my nephew's wife said, it was too lovely to use. She was using it as decoration. Right. And I was like, on the back of the chair. And I was like, no.
You're supposed to use it, right. That's so funny.
Next nephew that had, actually, another nephew had a baby, and I'd never made his baby one. So I made one for him. And then I made the next one. His children were only a few months apart, 17 months apart. So it was very quickly I needed to make the next one. And when I handed it over to his wife, I said, use it. The best compliment you can pay a quilter is you wear out the quilt.
Just wear it out. That's right. That's right.
And so she sent a photo, and I said, I want a photo of Sienna.
Right. Prove that you're using it.
She put the quilt on the floor and took a photo, and she said, you told me I had to use it. She felt terrible putting this quilt on the floor.
That's so funny.
I said, it's washable.
That's right.
I can't use it.
That's very funny. Now, what role does your life online play? Like being part of groups online, how much of your sort of community of quilting is that? Like how important is that?
Yeah. I spend far too much time online.
Mm-hmm.
I did, when I first became involved in quilting, I wasn't involved in the local quilt group. So I did have this monthly lesson a little bit with this other woman.
Mm-hmm.
I'd heard bad things about our local quilt group. I'd heard they were cliquey and bitchy and, hard to get along with and all the rest of it. So I wasn't going near them.
Yeah.
Which when I did end up going near them, found that, yes, there were some people that were hard to get along with, but there were lots of lovely people as well. So I got hooked very quickly. So certainly if I hadn't been online, I would not be able to say Tula Pink and Denise Schmidt and, Marianne Fons. Those names would mean nothing to me because I don't go in and buy lines. I don't go in, say, into the quilt shop and go, I go in and I'm looking for pink. I'm not looking for, and therefore I have to have all the other ones in that particular line.
Yeah.
So it's certainly the online. I listen to quite a few podcasts. I'm not very good at reading blogs anymore. I was good at it one stage. I've just got into Instagram.
Yeah.
But I must admit on Instagram, I'm quite interested. I'm following this thing at the moment called March Meet the Makers.
Uh-huh.
And that I'm finding it really interesting.
Oh, interesting.
It's people who make all sorts of things rather than just quilting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
That's
And
really cool.
I have moved away a little bit from quilting as much as I've got involved in a charity. It's a school in Zambia called Our Rainbow House. And locally, Peggy, who taught me to quilt.
Yeah.
Many years later, she started this sewing group called Handmade with Love.
Oh.
And we sew things to sell, to make money, then the money goes to Our Rainbow House.
Oh, that's nice.
So, yes, and I got into that and I learned to put a zipper in. I felt
that's
so
really
excited.
Great. That's great. I just learned to do a zipper in the fall. That's
and it's like, woohoo, I'm so clever.
I know, it's true. It really is. You just feel like
I
can do anything now. That's very funny. Yeah.
So I think that a little bit too was I have made, all my children have about 3 or 4 quilts. We've got quilts here, every bed's got a quilt, every cupboard's got a few quilts in it.
Yeah.
I give to the babies that are coming along. And but quilts take a long time from start to finish, whereas you can make a little zipper pouch in a couple of hours and you think, look at this.
That's true. That's very true. That's
so I've got involved in that. So I don't just quilt anymore.
Yeah.
I don't just patchwork. And in fact, I do a lot less patchwork now than a year ago, 2 years ago.
I think it kind of goes in waves, There's only so many quilts one can make, but yes. Well, this is
I have 6 quilts. I have 6 baby quilts I owe.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. 3 I owe and 3 are still coming, but they're coming soon. So I'll have to get myself organised.
Right.
Yeah.
That's craziness. Well, it's just kind of interesting how quilting kind of weaves in and out of lives. It's interesting to see the bit of differences with Australia, and I'm so glad you reached out and were willing to be interviewed. It's really nice and very really awesome.
My pleasure.
Yeah, it's great.
I'm sorry. I still don't know where the information is. I know I read it, but I don't know where it went.
That is okay. And have you joined our Quilting Army? Have you joined our Facebook page yet? Is that how? Did we get through?
Yes, that's what
I think we started, right?
Yeah, I found it again and left your message, sent you a message and joined it. I was looking everywhere for
fabulous
because I knew it was 8:00 this morning, my time, and so yesterday I started to panic because I couldn't find the link, and so I left a message on the quilted page, and I thought yes, but you probably don't come on here very often, and then
anyway. Funny. Well, we did it. We got together and did that.
We're persistent.
Well, I would love if there's events in Australia, if there are events that you're doing or things that happen, will you come back and chat with us? And we are trying to really understand the quilting world, and we're just beginning. So I would love for you to be part of things and post things and all kinds of things. So it would be great.
Yeah, no problem.
Love it.
I will.
All right, cool. Awesome. Well, I will send this to you, and I'm really psyched that you came on, and thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye.
Bye.
So this is Elizabeth Townsend Guard. You've been listening to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School. We want to hear from you. Join our army, our quilting army. Go to our Facebook page. Suggest people to be interviewed. Suggest yourself to be interviewed. We are excited to hear from you. But most importantly, I hope you get a chance to quilt today.